Hello from the darkness. Sorry, I'm trying to find. There's a switch on the floor. I can kind of switch with my. Oh, there we go. Switch with my foot. That's a little better. Hey, YouTube, what's going on? I am doing a podcast episode, and I am at minute 18, and it's time to jump into questions. So I would like you to provide me with a couple of questions for the podcast. If you didn't know, the podcast is back. I took a long break, and now it's just strictly a podcast. I don't do the live stream thing while I shoot it every time because that just became a little bit of a burden. So, yeah, so I'm gonna do it's back. So you can find the what's up, Gabriel? You can find the podcast. Just go search for Home Studio Corner in the Apple Podcast app or on iTunes. I'm sorry for those of you that are asking me to get it on Stitcher and things like that. It's coming. I don't have a lot of extra time to figure that out, but I will. It's on my list. My list is over there. It's on there. Today's topic, if you're looking for an idea for question, the topic is about mastering. But they don't have to be mastering questions. Just if you have any questions you think would be helpful for me to cover on the podcast, hey Peter, I love Studio One too. Then hit me up in the chat here. Let me know, and we'll record a couple answers for the podcast. So I'm not recording right now. I'll hit record as we figure out some questions. But yeah, I would love to do some more live streaming like this. It's super fun. I miss y'all in the live stream. I really do. Peter Cruz, thank you. I'm glad the videos are super helpful. That makes me smile. Any advice? Hang on. How about mastering tips for streams, YouTube? Ooh, that's interesting. I'm not sure if it'll be so specific. I use the limiter that's on my mixer on that particular output that's being routed to the stream. That's the way I've gotten around it. The only other way to really do it would be to route it through your DAW and have a limiter on there, which is going to cause latency. So it's complicated for sure. Advice on when is the right time to start loading tunes in the project page? Should the tunes be 100% complete? Good question, Mark. I'm going to answer that here, but not on the podcast because that's more a Studio One specific thing. And this is a more general episode podcast wise. So in Studio One, you've got the song page and the project page. Project page is typically considered the mastering page, and it is. It's great for mastering, but it's actually a great place for holding all the songs in your great advertisement. Yeah, I work for Personas now, by the way. I don't know if you knew that. It's great for holding songs in progress. So the first day I record, like tracking session, drums and bass are here. That day I create a project for that album or that EP. And then what happens is at the end of each tracking, like if we track 5 songs, at the end of song 1, I add it to the project. And then at the end of song 2, when we're done recording, I add it to the project. And that takes an extra minute or two because it does a quick mix down, puts it in there. But then when the session's over and the drummer's packing, and not packing like a gun, but he's packing up his drums, I can say, hey, give me a second, and I can go to the project page, slap a limiter on there, and then bounce everything down, all the mixes down, because they're just right there waiting for me. And I can have MP3s and a Dropbox link for them to listen to on the drive home. That's pretty cool. And then as the song progresses, if I go work on song number 1 tomorrow, and I add a bunch of guitars and some background vocals, next time I open up the project page, it's going to say, hey, song 1 has been updated. Do you want to update it? And I say, boink, yes, please. And it'll add all the new stuff to that particular mixdown. So it always has the most current version of the song, and I don't have to do any file management stuff at all. You know, the naming the file, date, putting a description in the name of the file, it's all lame. This is wonderful. Can you explain how you send your mix to the master project, how it knows you have updated the mix? I mean, when the song is open, if you don't have a project yet, just go to the song. Hang on. Hold on. I'm turning you around, fellas. And ladies, I doubt there's ladies. It's mostly dudes here. You go to song, and you go to add to project. And if you have a project already, you can add it to that, or you can create a new project. And it'll give you the option to name the project and show where it's going to be, so it doesn't have to be named the same as the song. And that's how you make the connection. And then later, if I work on this, I can come here and I can say, update mastering file. And it'll do a bounce mix down and add it to that project. Or if I forget to do that, which is totally normal, the next time I open up that project file, it knows that the song has been saved, and it'll say, hey, you want me to update? And I say, sure. And sometimes you can say no because you don't really want it to update, and it'll do it. Super cool. All right, sorry, I got to keep using my finger to scroll back up the chat. Do you use the mastering program for all your singles and or demos, or do you use another program? I use the project page in Studio One. Joe, I bought Studio One a week ago because of the discount, but I still don't know anything about it. Go check out, go to the Personas YouTube channel, watch videos from me and Gregor. I've got a great series, a playlist of just, it's called Studio One with Joe Gilder. It'll kind of walk you through. Whenever I try to automate third-party VST, yeah, I don't know how to fix that. All right, not Studio. Okay, I need a couple questions for the podcast, but not Studio One specific plug questions because this is more for home. This is home studio corner time, not Personas time. So, which I know is complicated. Do you ever use soft clipping? Oh, no, I don't, unless it's built into a limiter that I'm using, which I don't either. Low-end requirements are different when it comes to mastering. Does your approach to mastering change depending on the genre? That's a good question. Gabriel, I can always count on you. I've done some mastering for Gabriel, which makes this even more fun. All right, let's do that. Let me hit record, and I'll answer it on the thing, too. Hold on. All right, I've taken to my long-lost lover YouTube Live. That sounds weird. I'm streaming right now on YouTube Live and asking for their questions. And Gabriel had a great one. I've actually done some mastering work for Gabriel in the past, so this is especially kind of fun. But he asks, does the genre of music that you're mastering impact the way that you master it, like specifically with regards to low end? And I would say both yes and no. And this is true for mixing or mastering, really. There are some kind of guiding principles, I suppose. But first of all, I typically don't mix and master genres of music that I'm not pretty heavily involved in. So I would say 95% of the stuff I master for people falls into either like simple singer-songwriter stuff, rock, folk, country, maybe sort of pop-ish, indie, like that. The stuff that I tend to make my own music, those are the kind of people that I tend to attract who are doing something in that vein. So it's really not even in like the super heavy rock, don't do a lot of that. The occasional rap and hip-hop thing. But it makes sense, right? Like people are known and kind of live in different genres, so it makes sense that there are some folks who do everything. It just hasn't been the case for me, and especially right now because I'm not taking on any client stuff right now because I'm just so busy. But what was the question? Oh, the genre. So in some ways, yes. So like if it's a genre, especially one that maybe I'm not as familiar with, then I might lean more heavily on references, both for mixing and mastering. I might have a playlist just constantly playing on loop in the background that comes through a different channel on my mixer, so I can just always mute my main mix and listen to what's coming back from Spotify or Apple Music or whatever. And that will help me kind of just gauge like, hey, is the low end right here? Am I in the ballpark? I remember I mastered like an R&B. It's more of a hip hop thing, and I just needed to go listen because I don't listen to a ton of hip hop, so I had to go listen to a few hip hop things here and there just to remind myself, okay, this is how much low end is typically there. But generally, bigger picture thinking, Gabe, I just listen to it and think, how can I make this sound like I would want it to sound? Like if I had to listen to this for the rest of my life, right? If this was if I'm mixing my own music, that's what I do. Not so much, how do I make this sound like X artist that I love, which is nothing wrong with that. For me, it's more like, how can I make this sound like something I'm proud of, something I would want to listen to over and over for the next 80 years, right? Because I'm going to live to be 116. That's kind of more probably my approach. It's just immersing myself in music just generally, so I have a general like vocabulary, that's not the right word, but you know what I mean, where when I hear something out of place, it stands out because I know what good music sounds like. And The thing is, if you put together a random playlist on Spotify that had all kinds of different genres on it, from classical to pop to gospel to R&B to hip hop to rap, if those had been done well, then even in that kind of stark contrast of, going from a heavy metal song to a straight hip hop rap tune to a country song, they probably should go through and kind of work together, because like I said, all the last episode on mixing and the one a few months ago also on mixing that was probably identical. Sorry. You could probably take those two podcast episodes, put them side by side, flip the polarity of one, and it'd be silence because I did the same episode twice. I'm so sorry. But the goal here is balance. It's all about balance. Yes, a hip hop is going to have a different treatment of the low end, with, like, especially if it's got like 808s and things like that, than some sort of like bluegrass thing, right? But in general, I still, bluegrass is going to have an upright bass that's handling the low end. Hip hop's going to have a drum machine and a big bass synth handling the low end. Rock is going to have a kick drum and a bass handling the low end. So there's going to be someone handling the low end, and I need that low end to be balanced with everybody else. If I think of it as like members of the band, hey, low or choir, hey, basses, you are way louder than everyone else in the choir. Tone it down a little bit. More accurately, it's like, hey, altos, you're too loud. Shut up. But I digress. I haven't sung in a choir in a really long time. I miss it, but I also don't. Anyway, I hope that answers your question. There was another question back a little bit. Someone asked, and it feels appropriate because I'm live streaming and I've got my PreSonus t-shirt on. Somebody said, how are things going with PreSonus? And they're going really well. So in case you missed it, back in December, PreSonus approached me to come work for them full time as a product specialist for Studio One. I'm still here in the Nashville area. I still work from my studio. Outside looking in, it's very similar to what I was doing, except now I'm doing a lot of my time is devoted to making content for them, kind of supporting and kind of championing Studio One as a software, because it's become a big product for them. And we've been partners for a decade, right? I've been using Studio One for, at least 8 years. And I've done videos for them, and we've done trades and stuff like that. And so they finally said, hey, you want to come on? And it was kind of timing wise worked out. So anyway, it's been good. Currently I've got Home Studio Corner, which I still run, still sell courses, still run the VIP membership. It's still very much a part of my life and my income. And then I'm also the worship coordinator for my church, which is a part-time gig, but it still takes up, equivalent of a day or two a week of time. So I'm doing that, and then I'm also doing the PreSonus thing, which is a full-time gig. So hence why I can't take on client projects right now. A, I don't love doing tons and tons of client projects because it stresses me out. But B, I just are legitimately, the only time to do it is at night. And when I have to work every night of the week, I start to it just kind of doesn't work well for me. So I have to draw some boundaries there. So currently my commitments are to PreSonus, Home Studio Corner, my church, and of course my family. And kind of anything outside of that just kind of gets kicked to the curb for a season at least, because that's what needs to happen. And, I never saw myself going back and taking a job. In a lot of ways, I thought that would be a bad thing. And it's been good for me to kind of go that route. A couple other questions. Boo-ba-da-boo-boo. Dynamic or condenser mic? I'm loving condensers lately. Right now, this mic in front of my face is a Roswell Mini K47, and it sounds great. I love dynamics. I used an SM7 on my voice for years and probably would still be using it if it hadn't something shorted out. It still has passive signal, but it has a buzz now. So I just stopped using it and used this one and never got it fixed. It's over on a shelf, looking pretty, but not there. Do you miss the old podcast with Graham? I do. It was fun going back and forth with him. But it kind of ran its course, and that's okay too. Any tips for dealing with latency when tracking? Get a mixer, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Otherwise, you just got to play the buffer game. It's not a fun game, but it's worth it. Do you prefer large or small condenser mics on acoustic, one or two? So first of all, I tend to prefer either. In my head, I initially jumped to thinking, yeah, I like large diaphragm the best. But then practically speaking, I use those Earthworks SR25 mics that I've had for years that came out of their drum mic kit. I've used those on acoustic so much that I just love them. My EP Rain, which is acoustic, mostly just acoustic guitar, was done all with XY stereo acoustics using those Earthworks mics. And it's wonderful. It sounds great. So I guess that answers both your questions. All right. One final question from Captain Symbol. He says, please, 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 which I appreciate. It was the third please that really got me, Captain. He says, key tips for getting a killer guitar tone, especially with amp sims, is the one thing that flaws my mixes. This is something that I've been given kind of the same answer for years. I'm kind of going to give the same one to you. The key to good guitar tone is right here. For those of you listening on the podcast, I am pointing to my temples. I'm not even pointing to my ears, because it's not my ears. These big fleshy things on the side of my head, they're important, I guess. If I lost them, I'd have a hard time. And my hearing, of course. But you hear people say a lot. I'm in a couple different Facebook groups that I'm not super active, but one is a group for it's for church musicians, specifically talking about just gear that they use. So a lot of guitar players. And you see the same old memes over and over again where they say, the tone is in the fingers. The tone is in your fingers. And I understand, and I kind of mostly agree that you put the guitar, put me on Jimi Hendrix's rig, and I'm not going to sound as good as Jimmy because he's a better guitarist. But it's not the fingers. And I think the point is, it's not really the fingers. It's not the way they're mashing the chords, right? Because like an A power chord, there's not a lot of difference. You can hit the strings a little harder, I suppose, and that's going to change the way it works, but in the way it sounds a little bit. But mostly, you play an A power chord on the guitar and 100 guitar players come and do it, it's going to sound pretty similar. So it's not, the tone is not in the fingers in that sense. Where the tone is in the brain, in the way that you think about guitar tone and the tone that you're searching for. So the reason that, let's use John Mayer as an example. If you like his guitar tone, even if you don't, doesn't matter. Let's assume you like John Mayer's guitar tone, electric guitar. You could go down the path of, I need to figure out what gear he uses. Like I need a 2-rock amp and I need this pedal board and this Kemper or whatever. Or you can just really pay attention to what the tone sounds like, because what really gets to the tone, and this applies to mixing and mastering and really everything. So it's a very applicable thing, which is why I'm spending so much time on it. You need to know what good tone sounds like. If you can't recognize good tone, then you'll never know it when you get there. It's like if I go, my kid and I used to play Minecraft a lot. And if you're not familiar, it's just you dig and you mine for things. That's not all, you build things too. But when you're playing a certain mode and you have to build up resources, you got to go digging in these caves to go find things like iron and diamonds and things like that. And the game gives you different texture packs that change the way the game looks. The game works the same, it's still very blocky, but there are different texture packs included, and then you can buy other ones. So there was one texture pack called Natural, I think that's what it was called, that we used for a little bit. It looked cool because the sun looked really good and the grass looked cool and everything looked really natural. The problem was when you went down in the caves to go mining, you would look at a wall and everything looked the same. You couldn't tell where the iron ore was and what was just plain old stone, and so you couldn't find what you were looking for. So we would switch to a different texture pack where it was very clear, okay, there's the iron up there. I couldn't see it before because of the way it was shaded or whatever. Similar idea that comes to mind when I'm thinking about tone for guitar. If I don't know what good guitar tone is, then I'm gonna walk right past it. Just like in Minecraft, I walked right past a bunch of diamonds because I can't see them because I don't have the right perspective. So I think for a lot of people, it's just really studying guitar tone and know what good guitar tone is and know kind of the fundamentals of how to get that tone. Is it just a guitar plugged into an amp and it's turned up and that's the tone? Or is it more of a tone that you get from things like running some sort of a tube screamer type overdrive pedal into a clean amp? Or is it running like an OCD, a more aggressive, pedal tone into an already overdriven amp, and that's the key tone? I think it's some of that has to be there. And you're talking about amp sims, so if you're using things like Ampire with Studio One, or you're using any, the Helix stuff, any of them, they all can be really great, but they can all also sound terrible if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't spend the time dialing in a good tone. And the only way you can dial in a good tone is if you already know what a good tone sounds like. And that's what's been really fun for me in all the hundreds and hundreds of mixes I've done over the years, especially the stuff we did with dueling mixes and the client work that I've done, is I get to hear the raw tracks underneath, and I get to hear, okay, I know what the final song sounds like. Oh, this is what the raw guitar sound like. And so if you can get your hands on some multi-tracks to hear that, I've got a bunch that I offer through my different programs. That's not the point. But you can kind of hear, oh, if the tone sounds like that in the recording, then it's going to sound like this in the mix, and that's really cool. I feel like I've rambled, but I do think it's important that the key to good tone is up here and knowing what good tone sounds like and not stopping until you find it. It's not the type of amps that you use. It is, but it's not. You know what I mean? Like the old, this is a $200-$300 microphone right here, and I make it sound amazing. Why? Partly because I just have a good voice for voiceover or for singing or whatever. But then it's also I know what to do when I'm processing it, which honestly for this podcast, if you go back and listen to the actual podcast episode, this has a tiny bit of EQ and a limiter. That's it. There's no gate. There's no compression. That's it. That's it. And so then you start to realize that, okay, if that's not present in the raw source material, if my voice doesn't sound the way I want it to sound, then I'll never be able to use tools to make it sound different, right? If I sound like, what's his name, Kenny from 30 Rock with that high-pitched voice, and I go and try to use EQ to make it sound like, Barry White, it's just not going to happen, right? You won't get remotely close. Same thing with guitar tone. If you've got a Strat and you're trying to get a Les Paul tone, not going to happen. You can get close. You can get in the ballpark, but you're not going to get the same thing. Ooh, my computer is trying to shut down because it's on a timer. That means it's 9 o'clock. Okay, that's probably enough time here. I'm going a little bit long. I hope that helps. I know there were a lot of extra questions in the chat. Sorry if I didn't get to yours. Be sure to listen to the podcast and submit your questions on social media. Come over to Twitter, Instagram, someplace like that. I'll screenshot it. I'll save it in a special place, and then I'll try to answer it on the podcast. I promise I will do my best to answer it. Some questions don't work on a podcast, but some do. And that's how this works. All right, thanks so much for listening. I will see you next week in next week's episode. Let me know what topics you want me to cover, because we've kind of reached the end of this little mini series, and I'm ready to dive into some new stuff. So hit me up. Let's do it. See ya. All right, hang on one second. Let me edit this. I'm ready to dive into some new stuff. So hit me up. Let's do it. That wasn't right. See ya. Right there. Let's do it. See ya. Right there. Podcast. And submit your questions on social media. Come over to Twitter, Instagram. Let me turn that up a little bit. Let me turn that off. Let me tell it to export, because it's going to take a minute. Oh, I need to, one thing I didn't do, I have to change the start and end markers on this thing every week because it's slightly different every week. Sometimes I forget. HSC-247, that's this episode. It goes into the podcast folder on my Dropbox so I can get to it from my laptop. Export between the start and end markers. Doodle-a-doodle-a-doo, that's all right. Okay, good, it's exported. Okay, thank you for being here. Those of you who stuck around the whole time or whatever, I'm gonna jump in real quick. My voice is kind of going. My voice is going lately, I'm getting old. I'm gonna see if I can answer kind of popcorn round as many questions as I can here in just a minute or two. John, nope, that's not a question. Josiah, what's up, brother? Is there a way to get MIDI recording to function like audio recording? I.e., when you overdub it, it will replace the data instead of just layering it on top. Yes. It is just every DAW has a certain setting that's either MIDI merge, sometimes it's called, where it adds the notes on top versus just replace. Or you can just go delete the notes you want to replace. But yes, that is possible. Is there a good way to listen to your podcast back at faster speed when editing in Studio One? That's a good question. I don't think so. That would be cool. But no. The key is just don't edit it. That's what I do. Which makes me a bad podcaster. Okay. In one of your videos from 3 weeks ago about live streaming, you demonstrated how to make the matrix mix via the computer. Is it possible to record in Studio One while sending that mix? Yeah, that's what I do every day. Like literally every video you've ever seen from me, that's happening in the background. So yes. Can we play notes from our QWERTY keypad in Studio One? Yep, hit caps lock. That'll turn that on for you. Good decision. Hey, Joshua Davison. Any work on a low? The Fat Channel has a low pass filter, or has a high pass filter. I don't know if a low pass is in the works. But you can always just bring out the regular Pro EQ and use that. I know it's different, but that's the only option right now. Appreciate your stuff. Is it better to export your master to a WAV file for online streaming like Spotify or MP3? No, give them WAV files. Go see what they ask for. They probably accept anything. It makes sense to give them waves. That's what I do. I go to DistroKid, waves to them, then they do all the encoding from there. Do you think Personas will ever update to overdub on console only? Sorry, I just... you mean like turn the console itself into like one of those old Roland VSS recorders? No, probably not. That's going in the wrong direction. You know what I mean? You can record like your band to this SD card, but turning it into a full-fledged DAW inside the mixer, I don't foresee that being a thing. That was a thing 20 years ago, but not anymore. Hey, Joe, you're probably tired of this question, but I'm wondering if you're going to do some collab with Graham in the future. No, we've been collaborating for the last decade, so that season has kind of ended. Things are fine. We did the podcast, we did dueling mixes, we did some in-person events, and all those things have come to an end. So sad, but it's fine. It's good. How does that play into the reference tracks you pick? Man, I don't get. People get so obsessed about reference tracks. Just go listen to something. It's just go listen to something good. Mic collection. I don't have a huge collection, but I did on the 2018 studio tour. I did go through all my mics. So there you go. They're there. All right, I think I've made it through all the ones I could see there. Oh, it's about to fall. It's about to fall. Shoot. Okay. All right. Thank y'all for being here. I'm going to head out, go hang out with my pretty wife, and probably watch some Gilmore Girls. I wish I hadn't said that. I really do. All right, I'm hitting the button. See ya.